Brian, thank you so much for joining us and taking the time to show up. Welcome. How are you doing today?
Well, I'm doing better now that we're all together. I'm very much looking forward to this.
Yeah, us too. And so we're going to open with not your average question, which is how would you describe your creation myth, if you have a creation myth, as to where you are now?
Oh boy. do,
This could be like
do I?
events, synchronicities, key moments.
I think it's all, a lot of times we're told to follow our passion. And I think the greatest challenge with that is if you're, I don't know, if you're just a normal person, it's hard to recognize what those passions are. And I've found that I get excited about a lot of things, but that doesn't necessarily equate to passion. And I have run into roadblocks where I confuse that enthusiasm with what I believe is going to be in my own or others' best interests just because it's exciting to me.
Mm.
And I've had to learn over the years that uh, I need to look more at the person I'm trying to reach and why I'm trying to reach that person and how I'd want that person to recall our time together 2 years from that moment. So, 2 years from right now, I want to make sure that I believe in why I'm reaching out to that person, that they appreciate that I'm reaching out to them, and that 2 years from now, the way that they would describe that moment matters in a way that I can stand behind and stand the test of time at the same time. So I know it's a different sort of approach to things, but it is. I've had to be incredibly thoughtful, and I've learned that lesson, if I may tell it really quickly,
Sure.
from my last book. A dear friend of mine, one of the best marketers I've ever met in my career, had said, when you create something, and in this case it was a book, when you create something, what's the one word or what's the sentence you want people to say about you? And is that a sentence that you feel you could stand behind 2 years from now? And the reason why the 2 years from now was a thing was because you know how long it takes to write a book, and then
Yeah.
once it gets into the publisher's hands, that's a whole nother timeline. And so that advice was really sound, and I didn't follow it in my last book. I went with what I was passionate about, which was solving the problem of digital addiction and distraction, and helping others find their way. What I didn't think through was, is that in my best interests as a professional? How would it affect my career? And would it resonate with people because they recognized the problem was deep enough that they were looking for solutions? And all of those things were eye-opening learnings post
Can I
decision.
can I take you back further than that? Because I'm curious about how you became the guy who had to solve that problem about your latest book. How you became the guy who decided that in 2 years I'm gonna know this one thing about this experience. I'm gonna have this one sentence about this experience with you. That intention in this kind of creation myth question, it's like how, and I know it's a bit crazy to ask. That's why it's kind of a myth, like a condensed story. How do you feel you ended up being the guy that set those conditions? That set that who am I going to be for this person that's going to be important and committed?
Mm.
Do you have a sense of like the trajectory of what brought you to that? I don't want to say moment, but that kind of commitment to something.
Uh, you know, no one's ever asked me that question. So I don't know that I have a canned answer. I'll just be genuine in my response as I figure it out as we go. And that is, if I used if I used an analogy of speaking, I never wanted to be a keynote speaker. I'm terrified of audiences, terrified of public speaking. And that was just something that fell into my lap. And in order to help my career get to the next level, it was something I was going to have to do. And my first keynote was I mean, I don't know if other people take it as hard as I do, but I'll never forget it. I didn't like it at all. It wasn't my best moment. I'll never forget it. And after that, I decided what I was going to do differently was, as a condition of any engagement, I would have to speak to the organizer and or someone who was going to be in that audience to understand why were they in that room, or why were they coming to this event? What was it about this event that inspired them? What were they looking to solve? What are the problems that they're trying to deal with? So that I could use that keynote as an opportunity to speak to and through someone and take on the challenge to become smart and impassioned enough and empowered enough to have the confidence to go out on that stage and just be a human being trying to help someone else, and not be a keynote speaker trying to fly a message across the room. And so that I think is the answer to your question, is that I took the same approach for books. I think that's the answer to your question.
Well, me being a adept psychotherapist, I'm going to push you just a little bit harder, because I want to know where the interest comes from, and like, you can always kind of push me away. So I don't know, or that's I'm going to go that far back. But you become this guy who, in what you've just described, is very interested in how what you are giving is going to be helpful. What people need. Yeah. So something, is that something that you can trace way back, that you had a sense of empathy or identification with others, that you wanted to meet others where they were? Because, like you say, it's unusual. People might think of you as a keynote speaker first, or someone with their ideas first. You're telling us, actually, it's
something deeper than that.
Yeah, it's their heads that I want to get into. And I'm just kind of curious about maybe where that arose from. Yeah.
I'm sure it'll all trace back to my mother.
Now we're talking. No, I'm joking.
Only half joking.
Aaron, I completely understand. I think no one has spent more time with me on a couch trying to understand me than me, and the becoming, it traces to everything. Being a people pleaser, being someone in a relationship who gives more than he gets, constantly a consistent theme throughout my life. Speaking is tied more to confidence, but the empathy part to the book and writing that book and being that guy traced back to two things. One, empathy is just ingrained, but it wasn't always ingrained, I guess. I had to learn how to unlock it. It's always been there. I had to learn how it came with maturity, I guess, and emotional intelligence. And I haven't figured it out by any means. You still learn and grow as you go. But my mother was a wonderful role model. Hard work, caring, compassionate. Those were the traits that I can trace all the way back to my childhood, and probably still drive me to this day. She's taught me some of my toughest lessons as well. Put me in a work in a factory at 15 and a half years old. Wow. To teach me discipline, something I also had to unlock over the years, and still try to do that as well. So those are probably the catalysts, and I can't pretend to have figured out if I have them managed positively and productively. I probably would have been more successful in personal relationships had I had that figured out in the past. But with that said, I also am a big believer in leaving people and places better than when you first connected with them or in that place. And that is something that it still drives me today.
Well, I have so many questions. I think for now, though, because there's something really interesting about all these different elements that link together. So being terrified of being on stage, having this desire to really give something back, giving more than you take. And there's all these interconnected elements. And one of the things that really strikes me when I was thinking about this conversation we were going to have today is that you're living and working in a world of digital media, the virtual environment, where so much of it is suffused by marketing messages. I mean, it's the world that we both touch into and inhabit, but it's about performance, and it's about selling a story. And yes, of course, empathy plays a role, but there's also this quality of how do we show up with more of our whole selves and our integrity in a space which demands very specific metrics to be met, that we need to kind of always optimize towards a certain thing. And I wonder, in you, is there a tension between those elements, between wanting to come up, do a really great job, and also wanting to leave a place better, wanting to convey a sense of empathy, wanting to connect with people? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for asking me questions I haven't really thought about, but I probably need to.
Or maybe not. I mean,
the thing that's always frustrated me, I don't know if you feel the same way, but the thing that I have noticed, I don't know if I've noticed it in me, so I have to take a minute to reflect on this, but I have noticed it in some of my frustrations, whether they're drivers or inhibitors, that we have to discuss. But the one thing that I've observed in others are the more successful individuals, the people who set the bar for what success looks like, whether that's a speaker, whether that's an author, whatever it is, whether that's someone who's popular on social media, is the performative part versus the substantive part.
Yeah.
And so that's always been a thorn in my side, to the point where it's probably been debilitating. So the performance of it is not something I don't even know if I'm interested in it. It's just, I believe that if you have something to say and you know why you're saying it, then that's the performance is in the expression of that sincerely. But it's that lack of sincerity and polish and marketing and gaming of my competitors that just I have a hard time with.
We were having almost exactly the same conversation. But the thing is, within the mind of like, I was briefing Aaron on you before you came on, and I was like, but Brian, he seems to just, I'll have to ask him about this, brings himself into it, but it's also very charismatic. And I'm curious what it's like subjectively for you, because we project all the time on all sorts of people. And so to hear you talk about that is surprising and fascinating. And I'm curious, as like a follow-up question, do you get the sense that there is a difference between the way that you experience and perceive yourself and the way that people out there who see your talks and see you like on social platforms, that the way that they see you? Is there a mismatch, do you think, in that persona, or is there quite a lot of overlap?
I think there's more. I think there's more congruency now than when I was building my presence. I hear all the time how the things that I share online going back to 2020 had helped people get through the dark days of the world shutting down. A lot of people discovered, or for the first time, or discovered how difficult it is to manage things like depression, self-esteem, loneliness, a lot of issues that especially if you lived in countries where you were literally locked down and only allowed to walk or a couple times a day to get fresh air. Those were hard days. And so the true sense of my persona was shining through those years. I shared the things I would want to see, or I needed to see, or needed to feel, or needed to think about. And so that became the platform for how I shifted what I publish. I still wrote the things about the future and this, understood where we were as a society or as markets and where we needed to go as leaders. But the other things were the things that helped me get through and helped others get through every day. The other thing, though, to your point, could I have built the audience I have today with that as a strategy? I believe the answer is no.
Interesting.
The years, I was actually just having this conversation with a dear friend of mine. Since this is supposed to be personal, I'm going to be 53. By the time this comes out, I will be 53.
Happy birthday.
And I intentionally took several years off to spend more time with my daughters. And when you do that, you get off the treadmill or whatever metaphor you'd like to use. And when you do that, your presence is immediately, I guess, deflated. And it becomes more so the less present you are. And when I think back to the days that when I built my presence, it was very opinionated. I was frustrated with where the direction of digital was going. I was frustrated with the lack of humanity in technology. I was frustrated by businesses transforming with technology first and not people first. And all of these things just became how I express myself. It drove me to publish, to share, to create, to invent. Not even a lot of the stuff that I was saying, it was stuff that I was building. And people would say, like, what happened to that guy? People feared that guy. People followed that guy they wanted to see what you were going to say next. They were going to see who you were going to attack next. And that I was never mean. It was just, these are the things we got to do, people. And if you think about Scott Galloway, for example, it was maybe that audacious, but not that mean. It's just spirited, I guess would be the right word. So I was just having this conversation where I thought, I've got a new book coming out and I got to start all over again. Could I be successful with the platform I have now, or do I need to rethink this? And would I be genuine if I did have to rethink it? And let's just say there's a popular festival, a global festival that happens where I was a staple in that festival. And I reached out to see if I could get a spot where I would introduce the concept of my next book. And I was denied. No room. We filled up earlier than we normally do. And it was a representation of the battle I know I'm going to be facing, which is the shift from irrelevance to relevance.
Wow. This is so interesting.
Yeah, can I pop in?
Please.
So we've been talking a lot in these interviews about a couple of things that are aligned to what you're talking about. So one of them is about how our work lives are an expression of ourselves. And that this kind of idea of work-life balance is sort of fallacious in the sense because you want work to provide you with an opportunity of some kind of self-expression, though limited, right, by the work environment. And then how authentic that can be, and then how that changes over time, right? So it sounds like you were able to establish a platform that enabled you to perhaps to do it differently. Yeah. Now that you could, if you had started it now, but didn't have the platform, it wouldn't have worked. And I'm curious about your expression in the world is very unique, right? As far as I'm aware, it's like you're the only person who does your expression in the world, right? And what a lot of people struggle with is how do I express myself professionally in the world that's satisfying? And I would just wonder, and I know it's another big question. I'm sorry, I do ask the kind of two broad ones, but how did you find your way? Are you able to express to us how you found your way cobbling together ideas around technology and the future and the impression you wanted to make on the world to create your professional expression in the world that sounds like it's been able to pivot and change with how you've grown and developed as a human being? It's very unconventional, right? So you had to build that.
Yeah.
Well, I love where you're going with this. I used to call myself, it's going to sound strange. I'm sure you can dig deeper into this, but it's actually it's very simple. I used to call myself the Madonna of my space, and that was because, like her, I've had to reinvent myself over and over and over again. Hers was because partly because of relevance and popularity, to also because her artistic drive would just take her in new directions. And think about the platform that I started on in the 1990s was this shift to digital marketing and becoming an accidental pioneer in what would become digital marketing standards that other people would follow and build on. But I wasn't a marketer. I was a programmer and stumbled into a role in a technology marketing firm where I just asked one day, I was the database architect, if I could have a shot at a particular technology company launch. And that started, and websites became easier to build. And I started using those websites to share everything that I was learning and everything I was thinking. And then people started to read that, and fascinating stuff. And then I got into startups and helping them go to market, and became known as someone who was thinking through the consumerization of technology and how to get those technologies to gain markets quickly, faster than the budgets that they had would allow at the time, and inventing a lot of those processes, writing about those processes, sharing, and becoming a digital anthropologist along the way to figure out how people were changing as a result of their usage of technology, to then figure out how to be more direct, more connecting, more meaningful to them, to anticipate how those behaviors were going to evolve, knowing where technology was coming. So I'm throwing a lot at you to just kind of say, now I'm the head of global innovation for one of the biggest enterprise software companies in the world, and I couldn't have connected those dots going back then. But I'm where I want to be. In fact, I'm exactly where I want to be. But I wouldn't have known that unless I had my job at Salesforce as in global innovation before this. And then I wouldn't have wanted to be there until I published my last book to recognize, wow, all the things I'm saying about being more present in life, I need to be more present in my life. So I shut down my business and joined a company to be more in control of the decisions I made. So I guess it's just every step you take, the more aware you become, the more enlightened you become, the more emotionally available you become, the different options that become available to you. Then it's just a matter of whether or not you make those decisions.
Let me ask you one follow-up. Just sorry, and then
No, it's great.
I'll pass it. But like retrospectively, you can find that trail, right? So a quick-ish follow-up. Just were you confident back then? It sounds like in a way that you describe it, it's like surfing a wave, and I'm sure it wasn't that easy, right? Did it feel risky in that now you're at the end of it, you can look back and see the confidence of the direction, or was it terrifying? Was it like nobody's done this before? Is this, did you trust yourself? Did you develop trust?
I might use a different word than confidence. It might be ignorant. Might be a better word. And I mean that. I mean that honestly. I didn't know any better. I opened the first digital marketing company in Silicon Valley in 1999. That ended up pioneering a lot of this stuff because it was the only option. And I started it when my son was born. In hindsight, I would never have done that. I couldn't do that right now. No way. I risked everything by starting the company right when my son was being born. And it wasn't confidence. It's just what I had to do. I wasn't able to do it where I was at. And it wasn't being, I believed it was the future. And even though I had a wonderful boss and my boss's boss, and they gave me so many opportunities, it wasn't, they had minimums in terms of companies that they could work with, and none of the startups could meet those minimums. And they afforded me the ability to sort of lower that threshold to, kind of make me happy so I could stay. But I still had to work on all these other things. And then it's just something I had to do. And then I folded that company after 12 years. I actually gave it to the employees. It was so fascinating. People who wasn't confidence in what I was building. It's just things that I felt like I needed to build. And that's why I wrote about it, was to see if anybody else was feeling like that and build a community around that so that we could stick together and inspire each other and motivate each other and we'd build and try to outdo each other in a really healthy way. And then I met Ashton Kutcher, and he became an investor in my company, and then he became a partner, and then we were doing stuff with Oprah Winfrey and the United Nations, and it was so amazing. Wow. And then I wanted to be an analyst. I felt like the next thing wasn't marketing for me. I think, look, when you have a partner like that and you're doing like the Pepsi Super Bowl and you're doing cool things, like I got to launch Swarovski's 22 black dresses, which is like their big thing. Like I was doing some really amazing things, but I recognized that companies still weren't recognizing the opportunity with digital to be more meaningful, to be a better company, to be a better service, to innovate, all these things. And that I was so driven by that. And I just was frustrated that marketing couldn't change how leaders, whether it's company leaders, organizational leaders, country leaders, that they couldn't recognize the shifts that were happening. And maybe it was the digital anthropology that inspired me, and the futurist part of that, understanding where we were going as a society. That's when I recognized that the way to influence that was to become an analyst, to publish reports that they were the audience. But I didn't know that until then, if that makes sense. So there's a thing, though, that's been the constant thread throughout all of this, which is always be open to exploring be, do, get. Who do you want to be? Why? Then do those things to get ultimately what it is that you're trying to set out to do or become. And I'm going through that right now as I try to figure out how I'm going to get this book in the hands of people to meet the expectations of my publisher and myself when I don't have the platform that I had to do everything that I've done up until now. So this is it's an interesting moment, a new inflection point.
Thank you.
There's something that you're saying about this kind of sense of knowing that something had to be done, knowing that there's a direction, like a gut sense or an orienting. And I think with some of the most precise and some of the most sort of thoughtful and successful futurists is because you have this sense of where things are potentially going to go, and you can tap into that, this kind of societal sense, cultural sense, on a macro level as well as on sort of a more granular basis. And I'm curious, thinking about the way that previously people have built platforms, and I think things are different now to how they were when we were starting out. Do you think that there is a role for building something perhaps more slowly with that integrity in a space which is now so suffused with quick rises to fame, everything's metricized, you've got TikTok influencers, it's like there's so much noise. Do you think that one of the ways to cut through that noise is to be true to yourself and build things in a different way? Or do you think old forms of projecting oneself and getting your message across and building a career that you love are still going to work in this new era?
Oh, what a great question. Just this is a show unto itself. So one of the things that I've admired about you is that you've expressed yourself not just intellectually, but also artistically, as a singer, as as a painter, and you're extremely talented. And that you still make room for that is fascinating. That you share that, I feel like it's such a gift for all of us.
Yeah, I second.
As a guitarist and a songwriter, and someone who hasn't picked up any of that in years, it's something I admire. I also miss. And so when you say true to yourself, there are things that I am not tapping into, that my creative spirit, that who I am really would love to tap into and would really love to express, but I can't, because I can't seem to even keep up with the stuff I need to do as well. And that driver is, we're single income family, so I have to at least perform at a certain level. So true to yourself then takes a new sort of meaning, which is this persona, things I still love and I'm passionate about, or that I care about, I should say, that who this person is not really what it takes to be successful. You have to adapt that and connect that to people who would care about what you care about, but you have to reach them in the ways that they're looking for someone or something.
Yeah.
So now we have to talk about bridges, and we have to talk about storytelling, and we have to talk about performance, and we have to talk about all the things that I don't like to think about, but have to. I'm going to need a TikTok channel. I'm going to have to create TikTok videos that connect with people in a way that is not, I don't want to say it's not who I am, but it's what I don't do. So, because I care, it would be true to myself to learn these things and to invest in these things if I believe that my truer purpose is to connect with people who could benefit from the things that I'm trying to share with them. So in some ways, well, not in some ways, in many ways, I have to change in order to do that.
Very eloquently put.
I wonder whether there is, I mean, we always do this. We're like, oh my gosh, there's so many directions to go in, because I want to think about drive and creativity. I think that's really interesting nexus. But also just to throw out there that TikTok, I think, is actually can be quite a creative thing. I mean, I'm like a long form, deep, complex mind. Like I like long form writing, books, engaging and stuff. Yeah. But when I went onto TikTok, I set myself this challenge to do, a 1 minute TikTok video on each of the ego defense mechanisms. Like, can I actually reduce that to 1 minute? And so I think there is a way in which when we're fighting against the stuff that maybe we don't think is us, that could be nourishing. But then, I know that I could never do that with an Excel spreadsheet. Like, I know that that's such an inferior part of my personality that if I had to engage with that more than 5 minutes a day, it would kill me. So I wonder, like, if you can identify those challenges that you have to do that maybe feel like that are a growing edge. If you're not picking up the computer, wow, nice Freudian slip there. the guitar, right?
That's a good
Could you be
Freudian
picking up
slip.
something that is
Yeah.
creative, like what Natalie does, but also as a vehicle for what you want to, how you want to connect to people?
Don't know. Uh, I love,
Acoustic analysis sessions.
I love, I love that you challenge yourself to do 1 minute. I'm going to have to follow that suit, you know, and not only that, but do it in a way that someone's brain who is constantly scrolling quickly to stop and be
Yeah.
compelled enough and then engaged and entertained to like and follow. That's a
Yeah,
whole
to be
nother
fair, I'm not at all successful about it, Brian. So it's been more of an artistic engagement than a marketing.
I mean, that's exactly what, you know, I have to figure that out. I have to figure that out for Instagram. I have to figure that out for whatever platforms my potential community is connected to or and engaged within. So I don't know the answers to that question, but I have to find them out. Thank goodness for ChatGPT. Let me tell you, because I'm going to have a co-pilot in figuring this stuff out together. But in addition to that, I think it's sort of to be determined. I don't know. I don't know the answer. It's all sort of been hitting me at once because the book is in editing, and
Oh, well.
where we shifted into, all right, we need this. What are you doing about design? What are we doing about go to market? What's the launch event?
I hate that stage of the process.
So I don't know. What I do know is this, that I have to do what coming back to your original question, and let me know if I'm not answering this, by the way. It's that now I have to think about performance, and that's where I'm uncomfortable. But I care enough to figure it out so that I can do it genuinely.
That makes sense.
I think that, like, the reframing of that, so getting to the point where the deeper purpose is to connect with people, which includes, like, that's where you're going. It includes challenges which you're not yet flexed in or practiced in. Well, actually, I would even challenge that, because it's just a different platform. The actual practice of connection, of storytelling, of expressing yourself in a way that is going to connect with people, you're very well versed in that. It's just kind of moving that expression into a platform which is perhaps unfamiliar. I'm curious, are there any times in the past where you've had a similar sort of sensation to the challenge of, oh God, how am I going to do this? I have to reinvent myself. I've had all of this success in one specific area. Like, I've climbed this mountain. I've got however many millions of followers. Obviously, we're talking about a different context, but where you've really excelled in a particular area, and then you have to switch tack. And there's that sense of, how am I going to do this again when I've come so far down a particular path, and I now have to go down a new one, and it feels like starting from a few steps back or a few stages back. Have you had to overcome that kind of challenge before?
Perhaps this is because this is the first major transformation that I've had to do. It's the first time. It's not my first major transformation. I mean, my whole career is full of those. But the difference is that this is the first time where I feel what you just asked. How am I going to do this?
Yeah.
Before, it was totally gonna do this.
Just do it.
Why wouldn't I do this? I have to do this. I also have to do this, but I don't know how I'm going to do it. And I think about, for example, when Garth Brooks, at the top of his career, decided to stop everything to spend time with his daughters and get them through high school, and be a dad and do dad things, and similar to kind of what I did. And though when he got them through and got them through college and decided, okay, now I'm going to go sell out 30 nights in a row at Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, he could do that.
Yeah.
I have to figure out how to become a keynote speaker again. I mean, I still have I still have my reputation, I still have demand, I still have audience, so I still out there, but not at this level, right? So I don't know the answer to your question. I have to. This is the challenge. I have to figure this out. I have to figure out not only how to do this, but how to do it platform by platform. I have to do it in a way that instinctively, like Aaron, you brought out earlier, that you're a long form guy. I only know long form. I had a popular video series, but for a while at the beginning, but it's because I had to. So I have to do these things. I will figure it out, I'm sure. Maybe to varying levels of success will be determined. But I also have a day job, and I love my day job. So the drive to be where I was isn't actually my goal. To be successful as an author, to connect the dots between the book's purpose and people who could benefit from that purpose is the goal. And it turns out that it was inspired by the work I do in my day job. So it's actually going to help me in my day job as well. So I have a different set of circumstances and drivers and goals. I still have I have to sell so many books goal.
Yeah.
So we'll have to be creative about that. But I'm excited, nervous, anxious even about the opportunity. It's all coming up so fast. But what I don't know is how I'm going to do these things and how they're going to perform. But I do know the steps I need to take to figure it out. And they've started.
It sounds like a very rich moment. And I wonder whether from this vantage point, because you have mentioned drive a lot and have to a lot. And it was a really interesting answer to that first question about when you set up the company. And the answer was I had to, right? So clearly you are driven or were driven. And like you said, this is the first time I'm really thinking about it. There's this like pause. But from this vantage point, and you may not have the answer to this question, I completely accept that. Do you have a sense of what that drive was? Because it seems so strong and unilateral and unquestioning in a way that a lot of people, I think, would envy, right? I can see that it probably has a shadow side as well. But people are like, God, I wish I'd be driven. Like it didn't have to, I just wish I had to.
Everybody
do you know what
has that. I believe everybody has that. I believe people talk themselves out of hearing it or letting it overcome them or inspire them for a lot of reasons. I see that in everything as an anthropologist and also as a change agent. Right? My job is to change people's minds and move companies and executives in new directions. And you could appreciate all of the art forms it takes to understand and do that because you're fighting against cognitive biases, you're fighting against egos, you're fighting against all the things that are human, of which you have to overcome at a human level, not because your ideas are better. And everyone will find any number of reasons why they can't do something. So I believe.
Were you like pathologically unhindered by that stuff?
I just believe that's a driver for me.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I just don't. Look. I have a lot of things to overcome. I was born in a year where we weren't probably diagnosed with a lot of things that kids are able to be diagnosed with today and be treated with. So I don't even know if my brain works right. I don't know if a lot of things work. I just know that I can talk myself out of things. Like, for example, a dear friend of mine, Jeremiah Awyang, he's actually rekindling the fire that we had when we started our analyst firm altimeter group back in the day of Silicon Valley back to life because of artificial intelligence. And it's fascinating to see all these entrepreneurs moving back to San Francisco and events happening all the time. And he started a popular series called the Llama Lounge, and there was an event a few weeks back in Palo Alto, and he said you should come, and I knew I should go if I wanted to connect back in to the spirit of an emergent technology and in the place where it should happen in Silicon Valley. But I could find every reason why I couldn't be there. I got to fly. I've got all these deadlines. Do I really want to do that? I do that to myself all the time. So the have to do it is quite literal. It's happening right now. Why am I writing a book? Well, because I am frustrated and driven at the same time by the fact that we had a world-altering event in 2016 by an asshole who decided to put himself all over the world as the president, and then mess up our society and how we communicate with each other, tore apart families. Then in 2020, I had a world-changing event where we all got sick and a lot of people died, and we still argued as to whether or not that was a real thing. And then we had ChatGPT take the world by storm, consumerizing artificial intelligence and completely changing overnight how people think and work, forever changing our education, forever changing work itself, forever changing creativity, all of those things. And now we're about to have spatial computing be introduced, an entirely new way of interacting with information and space. And then you have general artificial intelligence behind that. Then you have quantum computing. You have 30 other things I can tell you about. And let me tell you what frustrates me. The words new normal and next normal. Every single one of those things have been life-changing events, and we keep trying to go back to a new normal and a next normal. We keep having yesterday's leaders hold us to yesterday's standards, to yesterday's success models, when all of these things are signs that we've been waiting for to change the world for the better, to become the leader that we've always said we need to become, to change the world for the better. Climate change, my goodness, that's something else that we can talk about. We need a new type of leader for tomorrow. Whether that's a leader who just wakes up, or whether that's because we believe finally that we have to do something. That's why I have to write this book. So I have to do it. I just have to figure it out.
Very passionate.
I was just going to say, where's the passion? Wow.
There's the passion.
Yes. And just for the record, I think Pathologically Unhindered was meant to be a complimentary thing, but it sounds like you're also not unhindered.
I already got it tattooed on my arm right after you said it.
Pathologically Unhindered.
Just added a hashtag.
Hashtag Pathologically Unhindered. I think we should go.
There you go. Maybe that's the doc tag for your new book.
Yes.
So where do you want to take this? Yeah. That's the next one.
I want to just find out about the unhindered.
Yeah, let's go for it.
Just quickly, because we do need to move into the next bit and we're running out of time. But are you saying then that before, when you had to, that you were hindered, but you pushed through the hindrances, or that you weren't hindered and now there are hindrances? I wasn't quite sure.
It's the latter. I feel that there are hindrances.
I also weren't aware of before.
Well, before I just was ignorant. Let's go. I was young, why wouldn't I do these things?
Yeah.
Okay.
But now now I'm thinking about things. I've got stakes, got a family. I love my job. I want to make sure that I keep the balance right. I've learned a lot about myself, especially going through the development of that last book. I've learned about the things that make me happy. I've learned about the things that I don't need to do. Like, in order to launch a book successfully, I got to do the things that I was comfortable not doing, like traveling the world, keynoting, doing marketing, self-promotion, a lot of things that I reeled back intentionally. So this is different this time. There are hindrances.
So then, thinking about all of the different places you've been and the reinventions that you've experienced, and the different chapters of your life, what life lesson do you feel you've learnt pretty well? And perhaps what lesson do you think you've yet to come to grips with?
Well, look, I'm gonna answer this with a little story. I'm just gonna finish taking notes, though. earlier when I referenced, growing up, not knowing if there were things that I could have been diagnosed with. One of those things is the ability to, I know what I need to do, but there's a million, procrastination, distractions, all those things that those are my demons. I gotta fight through them every single time. I'll give you an example. I'm working on some thought leadership to benefit our customers and our teams, actually, because of the sudden just pervasiveness and impact and disruption of generative AI. A lot of leaders are saying we need an AI strategy, but no one really knows what that means. What does that mean? And so I've been developing an AI maturity model to help businesses identify all of the dynamics and the parameters of what this transformation actually means. AI is actually quite disruptive in that the new normal is that we'll use it to automate the existing processes and ways of working and outputs, and we'll just make it smarter, more efficient, more scalable, less expensive. But actually, if you took someone whose job it was to, say, serve a customer, and you augmented them with artificial intelligence, both generative and just machine learning, et cetera, could you augment them to do more than just free time, make it more efficient, less expensive? How could they be better? How could they deliver better service? What could we unlock in terms of a new capability that we couldn't do yesterday? So that part is where the disconnect between the new normal and new possibility is, this maturity model. And it's taken me everything that I have to be able to sit there and do it, because I'm so out of practice. And so I find every reason why I can't do it. And it's taking longer than it should, but it's going to be done. So there are things that I have not conquered throughout all of these life lessons. That is that. But what I have learned is to recognize that, and to recognize that it's something that I know I'm going to face, and I have to talk myself through it and stay the course. But also, when I wrote my last book, Life Scale, I learned a lot about me. The whole book was, and it wasn't actually even supposed to be a book. I was trying to write another book, and
Whoops.
working through what we were just discussing, it turned out it wasn't just me. It was also my relationship with this, and all of the things that I since learned about at the time, like persuasive design and variable intermittent rewards and operational modeling, and all of the things that are actually intentional to make you addicted and distracted, to stay more focused on the device and the apps. And then how to solve that without actually giving any of it up. But that was the challenge, because as a digital futurist, you still need to use this stuff and really understand it. So how do you power through that? And so the journey to get there wasn't to turn it off or get rid of it. It was actually to understand who you were trying to be, what do you value in life, what's important, and to go through all of those stages of like a Control-Alt-Delete to recognize, wow, we've been moving so fast, we're moving faster, that we're actually not where we think we are, and we're actually not on the trajectory we think we're on. And that's actually what has this world so screwed up right now, is because people are not actually where they are and where they need to be because of a lot of things, namely it's not just the things you think, right? It's the information you get, it's the information you share. You're creating a bubble. And aside from the addiction and all of the persuasive design, it's actually limiting your thinking, your ambition, all those things, right? So the book itself, the discovery journey, the research of not just even treating the symptoms, but getting to the real core of it, the transformation, the personal transformation, and then identifying the real personal aspiration and the path and the things that you need to do to get to that aspiration, was transformative. So that's learning that was now I show up better as a husband, as a partner, as a friend, as a brother, as a son, as a dad. Like all of those things are now. I mean, I still make mistakes, but I'm more intentional and mindful about it. I'm mindful when I'm in front of someone. They'll never think I'm not in the moment. That's a big thing. That's a gift, actually, because that is hard to do. And the things I have yet to learn are the things I don't know, right? I didn't know I was not doing these things until I recognized that I wasn't doing them. To get there was a massive leap. So I think about this every day. What am I doing today that I'm going to look back a year from now and say, oh boy, I wish you had figured that out sooner. So
Should have talked to those two.
Yeah. I'm cognizant that every day, even though I'm moving through life confidently but also humbly, that I don't know what I have yet to learn. And I know it's going to hit me, and it's probably going to even embarrass me. It's going to teach me some lessons, that's for sure. But I do stay open to it.
I was just going to say, one of the earlier things you said was about remaining open. And I think remaining open and not knowing what might be coming down the pipe it's the best position you can take, right? You can't know what you don't know. You can't anticipate knowledge that you don't have access to. So you open to it.
No, but I guess one of the things I did learn is there's like 3 circles. There's what you know, there's what you know you don't know, and then there's what you know or what you don't know, right? And the third loop is where I'm open to connecting with. Most I've seen, they know what they know, and that is their operating zone. That is their comfort zone. There are nothing exists out of that. Vaccines, I don't know anything about that. That is fake. But then there's the I don't know, or I know what I don't know. That can extend that comfort zone as well. It still doesn't make it great because people aren't necessarily opening to themselves to what they don't know. They don't know. And
well, people often believe they know what they don't know, which feels like half the problem because they learned it in a 2-minute TikTok video.
Aspect of that too, but sure.
Yeah.
100%. And the algorithms seem to connect you with more people like you, which strengthens that whole position. So that part is, we'll work through that. But I am open to the third dimension.
Thank you. That's really wonderful. I think it's a nice place to shift into our quick fire close, really perhaps, because we could open another conversation entirely about what we just opened there.
So we've traveled through quite a lot of different themes, and thank you so much for your candor and being up for going into all of that.
This isn't going public, right?
Just for us. So how are you feeling about our talk today?
Oh, I feel like we all, as individuals and as productive members of families and society, should probably have these more often. But I will say that I don't know that I could have had this conversation with you before I wrote Life Scale. I didn't know I was closed.
Huh. Yeah.
Okay. So the next question is, did you learn anything new about yourself in this process today? But I guess I would include in the writing of that book. Let me just shift the question. And what has been your big lesson from that book? It sounds like, in a concise way, we've kind of been talking about it the whole time. But what is your biggest lesson from that book that leads you to today?
Oh, well, the biggest lesson is actually one of gratitude. I am surprised that people I care about are still here. Not that I was horrible, but I wasn't as present as and what I recognize now in decisions that I've made. Wow,
that's a great lesson.
So, thinking now, if you could go back to your young self, so say we zoom back in time and you get to chat with 9-year-old Brian, what do you think you would say to him? What have you learned, or what insight would you like to offer him?
I don't know. Actually, the visual I see is that meme of Batman slapping Robin. Because I I was actually thinking about this the other day. How it comes back to that ignorance part about it. It was how much I willed myself to believe that I knew more than I did, or that I did more than I did to even earn that way of thinking, of that belief. So I was just thinking about this. If I went back to my younger self, would I be able to even convince my younger self to listen to me?
Wow, even at 9.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, let's find out, because the follow-up question is, what does that 9-year-old say back to you?
Yeah.
So what does Robin
I'll never
back to
forget
Batman.
this. I wasn't an asshole as a child, but I just wasn't in touch with my feelings. I wasn't in touch with my feelings until I wrote the book. To be honest with you, it took me a very long time. I mean, I was emotional, but I wasn't in control of understanding not just what I was feeling, but how to communicate them. And so the book, in many ways, was therapeutic. And I remember when I was a kid, I was stubborn in some cases, and I could have been 9 years old, actually. I remember my grandmother kind of calling out that I wasn't being as collaborative or as nice as I could have been. And I'll never forget what I said to her. I don't even know what 9-year-old kid quoting Gone with the Wind. And I said, well, frankly, I don't give a damn.
Wow.
I'll never. I've regretted that my whole life, but that's probably what I would say to myself. I don't know. I don't. It took me a long time to be able to listen and to learn and communicate.
That's what I mean. I think it's actually quite beautiful in a way that there could be a communication between that kid who's quoting Gone with the Wind and the grown up who's making that space for feeling. Like, it feels like there's something resonant there in what's arisen for you. And since
if I had to psychoanalyze it, I would prepare for that moment. If I knew I was going to have that opportunity, I would actually know that I was going to say that, and then try to figure out then how, knowing what I know now, how I would disarm that at an early age. I will tell you this, though. Let's pretend that 9-year-old grows up. I don't know that I would be where I am today had I known what had I opened up then. I think there's that ignorance and that I call it willful thinking. Where am I where I should be? I don't know. But I know I wouldn't be here.
It's just as well we don't have time machines, so we can't do that. But I do think doing that for yourself and listeners as well, I think there's great value in kind of joining up those different developmental stages that we have, and being able to compassionately understand why he might have said that too, and vice versa.
I know that time is limited, but I want to share a quick story. I was on TikTok doing research, and a friend of mine, she used to be in a band called Carmen. Her and her husband, they were real popular at one point, and now she's popular as a rapper. Her name is DJ Herbie,
cool.
and she is so
Did you say
talented.
PJ Harvey?
No.
Oh, sorry.
If that would be a different kind of friend.
I was like,
DJ Herbie.
Got it.
DJ Herbie.
She is a very spiritual person, and so sometimes she's sharing her latest tracks online, but a lot of times she's also sharing observations, philosophies. And she said she was seeing a coach, and the coach gave her an interesting assignment. She said, find a picture of you at 7 years old. Could be 9, but 7. I think 7, I would have been less of a jerk to myself. So she said that the coach told her to find a picture of a 7-year-old her and put it somewhere that she would see every day. And let that picture, let that person inspire you every day to do more. And I think her point was, remember who you are, and be true to that.
I like it.
So I guess bouncing off of that point, if you could give people a piece of advice, would that be it? Or is there something else that comes to mind?
Oh, to be honest, questions like this, like also another question is there something that I didn't ask that I should have asked? I don't know. I can't, I'm not good like that. I got to think about it. The advice,
delete.
the advice, I don't know. I try to tailor my advice to people who are in a specific scenario. So this is why it's hard for me. But generally, I would say that, oh gosh, it could go anywhere. Pay attention to how you talk to yourself. You attract in life opportunities, events, people that you believe you're ready for. And a lot of times we actually talk ourselves out of where we could be, or we talk ourselves down to where we could be. And so I pay attention a lot lately to how I talk to myself.
Well, that's
a good
really
one
good
to finish
advice.
with. Yeah.
I think I needed to hear that today.
I think we all need to be pathologically unhindered in some way. Brian, thank you so much. I mean, you really went with us on this personal side. I hope that was all right for you. It was great. It was great for us to be able to hear that from you.
Thank you. I actually feel more awake and alert, and I appreciate it. And that's the total honest truth is it. I feel better.
That's great to hear.
So
and it feels like we got you at a really great moment of flux in your life and a fertile period. So our listeners are probably going to know when this book is going to come out, and they're probably going to want to get their fingers on it. So where can they? When would they expect it? What's it called? Do we know when it's coming out yet?
It's going to be out. Well, definitely in 2024, and like it's so fresh. I don't even know the subtitle of the book. I have to actually look this up. It is called Mind Shift: Ignite Change, Inspire Action, and Innovate for a Better Tomorrow.
Great.
Well, when this goes live, we will be providing directions to that.
Yeah. And where are some other places if people want to find out more about you and your work? Obviously, your new TikTok account. What are the links so we can include those in the show notes?
It is, I think, still true at Brian Solis on all of the platforms and briansolis.com.
Awesome.
Brilliant.
Thank you so much, Brian. It was such a pleasure. It really was wonderful speaking with you.
We really appreciate you taking the time to show up.
Thank you. And thanks, everyone. If you're still listening, thank you. Thank you for being here with us.
They will be wrapped. I feel confident.